Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Heart and Hustle Podcast. Today I've got a really good friend, and I'm incredibly excited for you guys to spend some time
I'm excited too.
on the podcast. Jake Friedlander. Bro, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having
appreciate
me.
it. You know, I've always been inspired by your spirit, your approach to life in general, but more importantly, you and I have a lot of shared experience
For
in the
sure.
fact that we're both building family businesses.
Yep.
And there's a lot of dynamics that people kind of don't appreciate about that entire growth process.
Yeah.
And so today I want to take a little bit of a deep dive into that. But first, why don't you give everybody an introduction to yourself and kind of what you're about?
Totally. So, born and raised in Las Vegas. I'm 29 years old. I'm in a family business we call Tough Skin. It is a marble protection product. My father's the one that invented it. And when I was 22, I had a little bit of a wild dream that I wanted to make music, and I was going to school for business. I had changed my major 3 or 4 times. Both me and my sister, who was at the time living in Los Angeles for working for Rockstar Energy Company, we both were feeling like this isn't like what we're doing isn't it. And because I switched my majors, I had a good amount of school to go through. So I ended up dropping out of school so that I could work on music and so that I could join the family business, because it was like, go to school for business for another 3 years or join a family business and learn a business from the inside out.
Yeah.
I also had this really great teacher. I don't remember his name, but when I moved back from San Diego, I went to CSN. And this business teacher was like a business 101 class. And you know, I'm thinking, okay, easy peasy, 101, let's go. I'm excited to learn. And I walk in and the guy's like, it's this really old fella, maybe like in his early 70s, mid 70s, and white hair, short guy, looks like a professor. And he's like, look, I've made a lot of money in my life, and my passion is teaching.
Yeah.
My goal one day, like this is first day, my goal one day is to die in the classroom writing things on the whiteboard. Like that is my true passion. So he's like, you can look me up. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I've made money though. Trust me. And you can look it up if you want. This guy was a multimillionaire.
Yeah. Instantly answered the question of like, why should you listen to me?
Yes, instantly. And he was like, I'm not going to give you much homework. I'm going to do one thing for you. And if you can do this one thing, you'll get an A in this class and you'll do great. And if you take what I teach you over this next semester, you could run a business and you could succeed in business no matter what.
Okay.
So his thing was he had 100 rules. In each, I don't know, it was like maybe every 3 weeks, you had to remember 5 rules. And you had to write them out to the T. Everything had to be the same. The periods, commas, apostrophes, everything. But if you did that, that was your grade.
Yeah.
At the end of it, you had to write 25. But you had a whole quarter to learn, and you're learning time by time. So it was relatively easy to do. And if I would just go home and write them down, and I would do it like a couple times a day, and then it's like imprinted in your brain. So that was my first business class ever. Now I changed my major from kinesiology to philosophy to psychology to business. And my first business teacher says, if you never took another business class and you just follow these rules, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
And it kind of just like, I'm tainted already, you know? I'm already thinking, what am I doing? But I moved back. I went through a little bit of I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I went down the rabbit hole. When I was 18 years old, I started looking out on the internet. I was living in San Diego with some friends, and I think at the time, this was about 10 years ago now, and I just started looking up like, what is the Illuminati? And just like, I started going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And there wasn't enough information for me at the time to realize or recognize that there was like maybe a middle ground.
Yeah.
I went from, my analogy kind of is that everybody is born looking at a wall. Everybody's looking at the same wall. Everybody's got or not the same wall, but a wall. Everybody's got a son, father, mother, one or two, maybe neither, whatever the situation is. Everybody has a sun. Everybody has a moon. Everybody has experiences inside of this wall. Each wall is painted differently, but everybody's looking at a wall.
Yeah.
Now, to get over this wall, you have to either experience things, learn things, go through things, all the ups and downs of life, and you have to want more. Then you start to climb this wall. And when you look over the wall, when I did, I saw anger, I saw corruption, I saw troublesome things to an 18-year-old looking at the world like maybe 19. How come nobody's ever said anything?
Is this your first experience kind of like getting out of, I would say, the mindset of being a child and
Yes.
then looking at the rest of the world
And being like, where do
wow.
we fit?
Yeah,
Who am I? What am I doing? And I definitely went a little crazy. I was convinced at the time, and I lived with a couple of my friends. They were all scared as shit of me at the time, that like I didn't want to go to sleep for a good solid like month. I didn't like going to sleep because I thought when I went to sleep, like I was going to wake up and a war was going to happen.
Oh, wow.
And like the war was going to be starting, just like Red Dawn. Like planes are flying over. I got to kill my way to get back to my family. My family's in Las Vegas. Like I'm already losing the battle because I have to go all the way back. And now I start talking to my dad at this time. Obviously, he's like, oh, shit, son. It's, he doesn't really know. But we had a friend and have a friend still to this day. We actually bought just not that long ago, bought a little plot of land on his ranch in Pioche. It's like outside of Pioche. And so he's, kind of the crazy guy that didn't do well in society, moved out to a ranch.
Right.
So we have had some connections. Me and Jeff still do have this. And I still believe some of those things because it's evident even more than ever, some of the things that I was going through. But I didn't have the perspective or the concept of like the internet, the real world, and maybe there's this middle gray, like the gray area in between.
Yeah.
That like nothing is really black and white. There's always two sides to a conversation, and there's sometimes almost always a middle ground where maybe this was done and that was done, but reality is maybe somewhere mixed.
Isn't it interesting? Like, I had a conversation on one of the last podcast episodes where we talked about the reticular activating system of your brain. And it's like when you start making things aware in your brain has an amazing ability to start honing in on those things.
Yes.
And so we really talk a lot on the podcast about like mental diet.
Yeah.
And so when you get into some of those stages where like you're looking for information and then you've got social media that's feeding you that stuff as well. Yeah. It starts to form your world and your worldview, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And that happened to me. And at 19, impressionable, like I'm so fortunate enough that I had my family to fall back on because I ended up moving back to Las Vegas. I went to CSN so I could go to UNLV so I could play lacrosse. Okay. I got to play lacrosse with like some of my best friends still to this day. And as you know, I was a little overweight in high school and I came back, I lost 80 pounds. I did a physique show in San Diego, like had this incredible experience all while kind of going a little crazy. Yeah. And then move back, go to CSN, go to UNLV so I can play lacrosse, get to play with my best friends. Now I'm as fast as I've ever been, as strong as I've ever been. And for the first time in my life, really, I felt like I was on the same playing field as everyone else. Okay. Now there's no advantage. Nobody is like, I cannot say, I have no excuse that like, oh, he's stronger than me or, oh, he's faster than me. Like maybe he's bigger, but like we're on the same field. And I always felt like I was missing something. Like somebody else had something else that I missed. And I just like, whatever it is, I'm not full. I'm missing something and that's why it's not working out. And that was monumental for me. Monumental at the time. And I was recognizing it, but I don't think I fully grasped at the time what was going on.
So let's boil that down a little bit. Yeah. Right. So you and I have both gone through our weight loss journeys. Yeah. Right. And I feel like there's a part of me that's always going to be anchored in that chubbier version of me. Do you know what I mean? And that creates that sense of almost like inferiority. It does. Right. Or that insecurity inside myself. And so I feel like even to this day, I have to work extra hard to get to the same level as everybody else. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's a chip on my shoulder that's advantageous or if that's going to be something that's going to push me to the next level, but it is something that I recognize about myself.
For sure. I think it's advantageous because similarly to like when there's a guy named Mike Malak, the reason I bring it up is because he had some troubles with drugs and then wrote a book called, I forgot what the book is called, but it's basically like him hitting rock bottom. And now when he talks about it on his podcast, he says, well, now I feel like it's a superpower because I got to go through that thing. And like, maybe I'm not going to say that losing weight makes us have a superpower, but it does give us this thing that like, for me, it was adversity. I had to go through this adversity of like feeling inadequate, feeling like, again, like I'm not good enough. I'm chubby. I'm overweight. And like looking at myself in the mirror and seeing how people reacted to me and being like, oh, I felt, and maybe it was me judging me, but like I always felt like when somebody saw me, they saw this chubby little kid that couldn't figure it out.
This is really interesting to me because I was having a conversation earlier today about the term of like agency. So having the power to impact the world around us. And often when we feel like we don't have control, it starts to create that sense of like inferiority of like, I'm just getting swept up in the world and I don't have the ability to impact my way in life. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's
for
very
sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And so that happened. I come back. I get to play lacrosse. Incredible. And then I drop out. Join the family business, Tough Skin. And at the time, I was just doing installations because that's like kind of what I was good at. And that's what we needed.
Yeah.
And my dad was, doing most of the sales. So I got to go, enjoy that, learned a bunch of stuff, kept working on music. And I definitely went through some periods that weren't great because now I had this urgency of like, I had just went through this thing. I thought the war was coming. The war's not here, but it still seems like it's imminent.
Yeah.
And the way that I get out of this is by having good music, and I need to practice all the time. And I was staying up too late, not making it to a job on time. I think one of the last straws where like my parents basically fired me for a week is I missed a flight.
Oh, wow.
And I had been up at, working on music till 3, 4 a.m. I was like, 2 hours, 3 hours, I'll be fine. But it was not just that one night. It was the compound effect of like
all the nights.
And then you miss the one night that matters because you didn't go to sleep. But I didn't have a good relationship with sleep either. I didn't know. And we're young, you don't, you're invincible. It doesn't matter. So that happened. I feel like I've gotten to grow up a lot. And I put my first song out last November, which has been a huge thing. I came out with a music video as well, done by Kyle. Shout out to Spirit. And when I put it out, then there was like this thing of like, is this good? Like, is this even worth it? Am I even, because I had spent so much time working on music that releasing it was almost like, what?
Right.
Why are you like, but this is the thing. This is why you did all this, spent all this time. And then I had to go through the like, well, now I'm not as angry. Yeah. But I think but the context is still the same. We still have the same problem. So it's been figuring out who I am as an artist and how I want to be portrayed, because I do listen to music and listen to the words. Like, I want to know what people are saying. And when I find an artist that I'm like, I fuck with what he's got to say, I'm all in. Like, I'm listening to everything. And then when I make music, I'm like, I want people to get my message. And it's still, I think we're always trying to dig for that piece of gold in music.
So let's talk about what your message is.
Yeah.
So,
what is my message?
Yeah, what is your message? So it sounds like you've come across a lot of adversity in your life. You've had to develop the personal skills to be consistent. You've had to overcome challenges. You've had to push your worldview a little bit in a couple different ways.
Definitely.
So how does that message kind of get conveyed in the music that you're making?
So that's a great question. And I don't know if I think that it's the best version that it's ever been. But if I were to like boil down what I want people to get from my music, and maybe this is down the road, even if it takes time, like I'm happy with that. But we need to course correct. We need an update in our system, in our way of life. We as Americans and as America got a chance 200 plus years ago to create a country. And now we're kind of falling into the same routines that we left the other country for.
As happens.
So I think we need a new education system. We need a new prison system. We need a new political system. We need a new, policing system, a new drug system, a new drug enforcement system, because what we're doing isn't necessarily working. And I hope that by talking about it, we can bring forth people that also are willing to do the work. Yeah. Because there's people out there like right now, Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson, I think even like Ben Shapiro, the Breaking Points podcast, Crystal and Sagar, like them putting forth the best information they can. Like even kind of what happened to Tucker Carlson not that long ago, him going to Twitter, like that is the system breaking down and being like, this isn't working, because he was with them for 15, 20 years he was their talk show host. Yeah. And now it's not working. And it's like, it's not working for a lot of people. Right. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. And that's how I felt. And I think I wanted somebody to tell me that I was not alone. Yeah. And I started making music to like kind of round up people to be like, we feel this way. And I don't want to let our system just go awry and be like, oh, well, we tried, or did we? Like, I want to say that like I tried. Yeah. And I've over the past few years accepted both paths. I am especially with the family business. Like, I work my ass off there so that I can afford to pay for my ship that's getting me to my island, my metaphorical island. Yeah. But I'm on a ship now going there, and I want to take care of my ship because I want to take care of myself. And whatever I want to be involved in, I want to be able to say that, like, I while I was there, I impacted it in a positive way, and I was able to, like, you know, build it up.
Yeah, the conversation, or at least the topic about, so we work every single day, right? Yeah. Most people show up to work every single day, and often that is a vehicle which will get them to somewhere else.
Yes.
But it's interesting when you're building a business with your family, especially.
Yeah.
Because my question for you is, does everybody's passion align with yours? So does everybody realize the role that Jake is playing in facilitating this role inside of Toughskin? He's using it as a vehicle to get to his metaphorical island. Does everybody else's perception of what you're doing, are they okay and supportive of that type of mission?
They are a lot more now.
Okay.
Because I think it was just a phase for them when I was younger. It was like, oh, whenever he'll be done with that.
Yeah.
But now that I've gotten older and it's still something that I'm sticking to, I think that they understand. Mm-hmm. And they saw me, obviously, like, my weight loss journey as well. So I've told, like, I'm a long game guy.
Yeah.
I learned early on that if I want something, I'm fine working for it. Mm-hmm. And, like, that happened with the gym. Same with you. Like, there was no instant gratification with losing weight.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with music. I've been working on music the last 7-8 years of my life. Like, I just put out my first song, realistically, in that time span. So, like, I'm happy delaying my gratification to get to my goal. Mm-hmm. And they definitely understand it more now. We also recently in the business, we hired this company. The lady's name is Rebecca, and it's a process called the EOS system. It's an entrepreneurial operating system.
Okay.
And it basically, it gave us a way to break down our business and to make sure that everybody's in the right seat doing the right job.
Oh, this is so relevant for me right now.
So there's an integrator. There's like the bird's eye view guy, like the ideas guy, which is, like, basically at the time my father, and still is now, and eventually that's where I'll take my position of. But there's the bird's eye view, the ideas guy. There's the integrator. That's the person that kind of, like, makes the things happen to some degree, and most of the time has the final say, which is my mother, the owner. And then there's, like, the sales side. There's the installation side, there's the dealer network side, there's the, you know, the different parts of the system, and then everybody has, like, their own part. So everybody knows what their part is and knows what their job is, and we do meetings on a pretty regular basis, and we talk about, like, everybody has rocks.
Yeah.
So you make 5 rocks for the quarter. For me, it's like my sales quota, it's new relationships with architects and designers, it's 3 hotel quotes that are above a certain amount for me, just because, and then, like, I think my other one is 4 samples done in hotels. So new hotels that we haven't talked to yet that have a sample that we've done inside their bathroom vanity, inside their bar, whatever the case may be. So those things happened, and those are under my rocks, and then we talk about them, but that has made our business system a lot better. And I do believe that the other thing that I do is now accepted. Yeah. And my father, while we were not that long ago, we were just in Miami, and we drove up to have dinner with our dealer up there. And while we were in the car, the dealer's name is Derek. He was like, "Hey, like, how is your hip hop thing going?" You know? And we talked about it a little bit, and it's definitely still a little bit awkward for me, especially with my father, with, like, my parent, definitely with my dad, and Derek. You know, they're just older people, and I'm like, my music, like, I think they get the idea. When I talk to somebody, they totally get the idea. Mm-hmm. Now, musically, I think for me, that's kind of a way to, like, help get people involved. Yeah. Because I can't have the conversation with everybody. That's impossible. Mm-hmm. But if I can get you involved in the music, then you can be on board. Even if you don't like my music, you can support the idea that I'm pushing forward. Yeah. And so my dad was like, you know, I gave him the pass that if he makes it big, we'll relinquish his duties. Yeah. And, like, it was a little laugh, but it was also like that was nice, you know, because it was not only in our talk, it was with somebody else. Validation. So that was definitely nice. And I feel like I have so much validation with people that are our age or even older people, but with my parents, it's just so funny because it is such a broad thing that I'm trying to accomplish. And it's not, I don't believe that I have to do it all. I just think that by kicking down the door and starting a conversation, we can start to group together the people that can make it better.
That's exactly right.
Educators. There's professors and educators all around the United States that could help build a better education system. Mm-hmm. But if we go to politicians that aren't educators, that aren't teaching kids, like, you're disconnected and you can't tell that person how to run a good school. So I think that we just need to, like, not burn the thing down. Mm-hmm. We need to create new laws to make a better society.
Yeah.
Like, for me, and me and my dad, we talk about this one a lot, but Citizens United.
Yeah.
Citizens United is a law that makes it possible for basically corporations to pay millions to billions of dollars into our political system. Mm-hmm. It's what's made it possible for politicians to be bought, frankly.
Yeah.
Lobbying, all of that jazz. If we get rid of that and we take money out of politics, politicians can no longer be worth $100 million or $30 million. Like, I think as a public servant, I'm all about people being wealthy. I'm all about it. Do that. If that's your goal and you need the money and you want the money, do it. But as a public servant to the country, that should be off the table.
Yeah, normally, like, our idea of servitude does not come along with being incredibly wealthy.
No.
Right? There's a disconnect.
There's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I think that it's happened slowly over time. Mm-hmm. Like, it was one law at a time, one maneuver at a time, one thing that happened at a time. But it snowballed, and now we're here. And it's like, if we just let the snow keep rolling, we're gonna run off the cliff.
Yeah,
eventually.
We're gonna get in trouble.
Like, there is people like Tulsi Gabbard, and even like Robert Kennedy Jr. I'm not saying he's the guy that needs to be the next president, but like, right now, the political system is kind of like shushing him and not letting him do his thing. And like, they don't want to have a debate. They don't even want to have the DNC. Like, I heard that they don't even want to let Biden debate with other people. And it's like, no shit, because he shouldn't be he can't hold a conversation. Like, he just fell over like again. And it's like, I don't think he's a bad guy, but like, we need something better than that. Like, there has to be a better option.
And I think because we're coming from a younger generation, we recognize that there is so much opportunity for different representation from the people and the society that we come from, that when we're kind of operating in a legacy system, it's like, hold on, why are these four people the people who are supposed to drive us forward? You know what I mean? Like, the system that we're stuck in is really kind of laborious to make change, and like change is the only thing that's really going to save us,
for sure.
You know,
and it's tough, and that's why I feel like, and I think luckily my perspective has grown, because for sure when I was younger, like, I was making songs like "fuck the system," like basically let's burn it all to the ground. And like, I'm so happy that I didn't put that out. Like, there's some music when I go back and listen to, I'm like, hey, this isn't bad.
Yeah,
but that's not the message that I have now, because I think that I've grown and I see the world a little bit better, and like, I can have more perspective about it. But it is strange that so little people want to talk about it. And like, a lot of people on a couple podcasts that I've heard recently, they're like, not even want to get into things that are conspiratorial or pushing the grain or like controversial. And in a way, I think that's the only way we move forward, is by having uncomfortable conversations. But I think we need to be having the real uncomfortable conversations that are about our system and our real livelihood, not things that are insurmountable.
Yeah, there's always like a sense of moral distress, right, in our society.
Yeah.
If it's one topic or the other, right? So many people kind of are finding themselves baited into having these conversations, but also there's an extreme sense of like political correctness today, which stops a lot of those challenging conversations to be had. Yeah. And so it's like, when we're operating in the safe space consistently, it's like you can't get a different perspective, or you can't even help people think differently by creating an inclusive conversation. And that's what I keep hearing you say is like, I'm trying to create a message that creates opportunity for people to come together and for us to collaborate and also experience different, perspectives of mindset as well. Yeah. Which is incredibly powerful. Thanks. And that's kind of where democracy in itself and like the ideals of where our country started really came from. Yeah. But now, like you said, it almost seems like we're backtracking a little bit to where we came from.
It definitely
and that is a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And, I have a lot of opinions about social media and how today our generation of people is dealing with a factor of distraction that has not only been prevalent in the last couple of years that our generation and society in itself doesn't really know how to deal with, but it's also being weaponized as well.
100%.
So it's like we have conversations, you see the news, the tabloids, all this kind of stuff. There's always something to talk about, but often that thing to talk about is not the thing that we should be talking about.
Of course.
Distraction. Know what I mean? It's a distraction.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have to figure out a way to be able to navigate that.
For sure.
Which is really tough.
And because there's so much distraction, it makes it also harder to find the thing or things that matter more.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that, like, if something happens, they can just like push 5 other things and like that gets swept under the rug and we barely talk about it.
Yeah, there's an idea that I think about often, and I just brought up to my mind, but it's like our generation today confuses authority with popularity.
Oh,
so it's like you see a message, like great example. I see stuff on social media sometimes that will be like headline, this football player or this basketball player is trading teams, and it's got 50,000 likes. I'm like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then a couple days later, I'll see a reputable news station come out and be like, this is what's actually happening. I'm like, oh, damn, I thought the world was looking some way because a whole bunch of people agreed with it.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have the sense of accountability to recognize if that was credible or not.
And
you know what I'm saying?
And I think that happens in so many ways. It happens with news headlines. I feel like it happens with so much stuff because all you have to do is see the headline and not look into it. And then similarly, like you get into those conversations and now it's like all you've got is what you saw on the news and it might not even be totally true, but now you're arguing with somebody off a topic that you may not know enough about, but you used to be able to say, like, I think back to when our parents growing up and grandparents, like when they watched the news, it was relatively trustworthy. Like they had a general sense of trust. And now it's like with so many news stations, if you don't do your extra research, like you probably have bad information. And that in and of itself makes it for more confusion and more distraction because I think a lot of people nowadays are just like politics, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't even want to deal with it. I have a hard time voting. And like, I shouldn't. I should be able to be like, I'm going to pick one. And it was hard last time to vote.
But it also comes down to that sense of agency, right? That I was talking about a little earlier. When you feel like you're not contributing to the bigger conversation, you start being like, okay, if I don't even matter, then why am I even going to vote?
And like, do our votes matter? Like, we want to say they do, but like realistically, if we're not even getting a chance to look at the best candidates and have the best options, like we're choosing from a a bad spot, a spot that's not really a winning position. And now we just have to be like, and kid to ourselves that like, if you're picking this side, I'm picking this one and but I think the good side of it or the silver lining is that enough people have had this similar reoccurring thought. And I think now more than ever, people are like, no, both sides suck.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that even 4 years ago or during the pandemic wasn't the situation. It was like Trump or, you know, and when people got caught into what was it? January 6th. It was the group.
The insurrection.
Yeah, but the group was
started with a Q.
QAnon,
yeah.
So when QAnon started to wrap people into pedophilia and killing babies, they sunk their teeth in.
I mean, but like those, so this is going to bring up my point.
Yeah.
So I was at a conference last weekend and this guy was talking about how we live in a reaction-based society today. So the way to influence people is to get a reaction out of them. Yeah. And so we've seen the media over the last couple of years has really turned into a reaction factory.
For sure.
By the headlines we see, by the stories they run. And
even
the best way to get
true.
people to be involved is saying, what reaction can I get from society and loop it into my cause? So if you align with the reaction that I just got from you, then you should also be in line with what we're talking about as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
and that's a very seductive and very powerful way of influencing people.
Yeah.
That is being weaponized.
For sure.
You know, I continue to worry about our society because everybody in this game today of media creation is getting better and better. And we're modeling what other people are doing. And so when you have a bad example of using influence inappropriately, people are like, oh, I can do that as well.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And that's scary.
For sure. And I think so many of these things have so many outlets because in a similar way, I think that when people think that their government is corrupt or that the world is corrupt, like it's just easier for them to also do it too. Same thing. It's like the mindset of, oh, if it's already happening, I can do it too.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of like, I like this example, but like when Diddy came out with Bad Boy in the 90s, he was like, everybody's good. So I'm bad. I'm the bad boy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily I'm evil.
Yeah.
That some people thought like, ooh, he's bad. It was more like everybody's good. I'm just going to do the different thing.
Yes.
And I feel like it's like a pendulum and it swayed to this bad side. And we've almost like gone, you know, now we're starting to hopefully swing the pendulum back because people are realizing that bad now isn't getting us to the good. Yeah. And like, I think there's always like that good versus evil pull. And at the moment it does kind of feel like the evil is winning a little bit.
Yeah.
And we just have to pull it back to this side. Like it's, you know, to some degree, hopefully yin and yang is.
Yeah. I mean, but like in our society, we also see that negativity also gets reactions, right? And I think one of the things that I worry about from our perspective in general is that we come from millions of years of adaptation where our brain pays attention to the things that are threats. And going back to the optimization conversation, it's not as clickbaity when someone shows you something positive, right? But it is clickbaity when someone says terror in the Middle East. Yeah, exactly.
Somebody got stabbed.
Yeah, exactly.
Terror
and that's
in the
where
Middle
our
East.
media leads today. And I always, like, going back to the conversation we were having a little earlier with the mental health diet, it's like, dude, when we are consuming consistent negative stuff, no wonder you're going to see a secondary factor of anxiety, stress, feelings of overwhelm, depression, all that kind of stuff.
All those things are through
It's
the
like,
roof.
yeah, guys, because subconsciously you're on a diet of negativity and terror all day.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to proactively kind of overcome that stuff? And often people are like, I don't even know where to get started.
For sure.
You know?
I think it's such a, and it's, I think as for men, for me as well, it's like, I've really had to decide and like make some decisions about things and decide to like continue to do them, or like decide that this is what I want to continue even talking about. Because in some respects, there was times when I was making music that I was like, I haven't put out a song yet. I could just stop.
Yeah.
I don't have to do this. And there was little points of that. And for me, it's helped me to grow and like to be me and be the fullest version of myself. But if you aren't having those outlets or aren't getting those outlets and you're just being consumed by other people's things, then I think it again leads to like, well, now I'm not doing the thing that I want. So let me just watch other people get injured or something that's also not what they want either.
Yeah.
And it's like this like reactive thing, full circle. It just like kind of keeps going around and round. And like, oh, in some ways we have to just break the cycle. But that's an individual thing. Like you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. I think that's like one of philosophical's greatest questions is like, how do you get somebody to want it for themselves? Because if they don't want it for themselves, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think that in our world right now, a lot of people are just like, well, fucking, what are we doing? Like, what's it for? If we're, you know, and I think a lot of people that are struggling for money and food, which is a lot of people right now. And it's staggering when you hear like 70% of Americans can't afford $1,000, you know, deduction or emergency, something like that. And it's like, if 70% of people can't get $1,000, that's, you know, food for a week sometimes. And if something happens to them and they can't afford it, they have a tire that gets blown out. It's like, as a society, we have to be able to make everybody have a better standard of living and be able to enjoy their life a little bit more, or nobody's happy. Everybody starts, you know, and then I think the answer that we're seeing is pharmaceuticals. Like, oh, take this pill, this drug will help you. But as we know, drugs lead to more drugs and lifetime patients, and there's no money in healthy people. Yeah. And we've seen Moderna and Pfizer make billions and billions of dollars off of a vaccine that is, you know, questionable to some degree. And it's like, we paid for it. Our taxpayer dollars paid for the studies and for them to be able to make these incredible drugs. And if it is, like, why do they get all the profits? Like, where does the, you know, again, I just feel like it's the system needing a little bit of an update, and going back to why we left the UK and Great Britain was to find a better way and to create a new life. And it's just like, in a way, we just got back into the rut. But America is really the last stand in a way. Like, most people maybe I'm ignorant in this sense, and maybe this isn't correct, but I feel like in China, there's not as much chance of people thinking that they're going to change their class, change their status, or even like do something more than what they were born into. And I think America has that opportunity, which is why I still believe that like it's here. The answers are here, and we have to kind of lead the world back into what is, you know, the right thing, rather than being the world's police, because that's not really what I feel like most Americans.
I mean, we just need more people to lead by example.
For sure.
Right. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where this guy was talking about the prevalence of ADHD diagnosis in the United States. And he was like, let's just take this at a global stage. And, you know, ADHD in the last couple of years has become something that everybody says they have. Yeah. But ADHD really is a diagnosis that is serious. Do you know what I mean? It's a pathology of your brain not being able to kind of focus on things. Yeah. But what he was saying was, in the United States, there is a diagnosis. 10% of children are diagnosed with ADHD in the United States. 1% of children in Europe are diagnosed with ADHD. And so he was like, what's going on here?
Where's the other 9% coming from?
Where's the other 9% coming from? And why is there a 10x rate of people being diagnosed in the United States? It's because of our culture and the pharmaceuticals that come along with that behind it. But what he was making the point of, he was like, I always push skills over pills. And one of the issues that we have, I love that, right?
That's incredible.
I was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. He was like, the biggest problem that we have in society today is our ability to have emotional regulation. The biggest problem we have is we can't manage our emotions. Yeah. And so when we talk about the use of social media and how much time people are spending on their devices today, it's not the devices. It's a side effect of our inability to manage ourselves.
Yeah.
Because like a great example is like when the majority of people today are bored, what do?
Go on their phone.
On their phone.
When they're nervous, go on their phone.
Exactly. And so what we're looking for is our brain starts saying, okay, I want to feel different. So how do I feel different? And it's got an anchored behavior in pulling out our phone and hopping on Instagram and getting that little dopamine change. But it's not the dopamine we're searching for. Our brain is putting an anchor in the behavior that led to the dopamine change.
That's crazy. It's the behavior before the action.
It's the behavior before the action.
That's crazy.
But no one has these conversations around awareness of like, hey guys, if you're having these feelings, you need to kind of build the skill set which will help you identify these things.
And not
kind of go directly to the behavior. Because like the thing I worry about today, especially in our younger generation, it's like we're exposed to social media more so than ever. We're exposed to more negativity, but we're also exposed to other things like instantaneous access to things like pornography.
Yeah.
Right? These type of activities are very corrosive at a macro scale of long-term exposure.
Especially with impressionable kids.
And it's like if you're training these kids who have accessibility to these things instantaneously on their phones at such a young age, what is the downstream effect?
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
The same thing that comes along with my argument against the vaccines and everything is we don't have enough data to be really able to see what the long-term effect of these things are. The same with pharmaceuticals. The practice of medicine today in itself is always pill first. But
let's see if we can fix it.
Yeah, but what is the undiagnosis plan?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever heard that? So whenever you go break your arm, right, you go into the doctor and they say, we're going to put you in a cast for 5 weeks and then you're going to be healed, or we can go to rehab after that. That is an undiagnosis plan. The problem that we have with ADHD today is they're like, we're going to put you on Adderall.
And we're going to see what happens.
Infinitely.
Yeah.
There's no undiagnosis plan. So it's like, what is the long-term effect of putting somebody on a prescription or a medication?
And then making them think they need it.
And then making them think, and it turns into an identity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, I'm just so passionate about this is because I see like so many people absorbed by the tools and we play this role of victim rather than taking accountability for the things that we actually have control over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. And I think for my experience, I think a lot of it comes from having to go to a school that isn't necessarily teaching you things that you need in your life.
Absolutely.
And for me, growing up, even like we both kind of were in the middle ground where my first cell phone I got when I was in high school, but it was like a little QWERTY keyboard, you know what I mean? Black and white, had this snake game, like it didn't really do much but call and text. Mm-hmm. And you didn't really text because it was annoying.
Yeah, and you were T9ing 664-144, you know what I'm saying?
So it's like that wasn't until high school. Mm-hmm. And now it's like with kids like you said, having so much access to, I think that it makes it more difficult to go into a school, especially when you have the information at your hand. Like in high school, we didn't have an iPhone that had all the answers in it.
Dude, I remember when my phone literally like had an antenna that I pulled out the top and it had like a super sketchy like TV signal.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying? We didn't have the technology.
We didn't have the technology, but I feel like now if you're asking a kid to go sit down for 8 hours, and I think in general, boys are not meant to sit down for 8 hours the first thing in the morning. Like
exactly.
You make them wake up early and then they go sit down for 8 hours and you're just kind of like, in a way, it does feel like you're getting indoctrinated into like, this is what you do. Because when you go to work, you're going to work for 8 hours and you're going to go home and then you're going to have your life.
Let's talk about the education system in general. So I love being able to bring up this point. It's like, so why was the education system in the current form implemented in our society?
John D. Rockefeller.
Exactly. So talking about preconditioning a generation of people who are going to need to come into an industrial revolutionized America and play in the role of like, stay here for 45 minutes, hear the horn buzz, move to the next station. Yeah. And then when you've got a generation of people who come up like that, it's scary the impact that it has on our society in general. Sure. But why are we still participating in the same society that Rockefeller stood up or one of these other people?
And it's tough because at the time, it was only like 5th grade. It started with 5th grade, and then it went to 8th grade, and then it went to 12th grade, and then it went to college, and then you need your master's. Now you need your doctorate. And it's like, it's just this ever evolving, like, you need more. Yeah. But I think, again, it's like in a way, America is this like progressive thing and like more, but we're like missing the point that like, okay, now we have technology, we have all this information. If you go make a kid sit for 8 hours for 10, 12 years, it's like they have the information. What are they doing with that time? Like, yeah, you definitely learn stuff for sure. Don't get me wrong.
Agreed.
But it's different when it's like we could be teaching other things. Like, why don't we talk about taxes in school? Why don't we want kids to be able to create a business? Entrepreneurship is extremely difficult. It's something like 98% of like entrepreneurial family businesses, small businesses fail. And that's for a reason, because it's fucking difficult. And there's a lot of hours and there's a lot of things that go into it. But like, what about skills? Like you said, skills over pills. I think with a lot of kids, like I think it would have been cool if there was like a car garage in class and I could have gone and worked on cars. Like that would have been a fun skill for me to learn. And that stuff is
becoming more proficient now and more relevant now.
Because our generation didn't really learn that. Like I can change a tire for sure. I can change a battery. I can do so. I had to change my radiator one time in my Mustang. It was great. But I didn't do a lot. I did minimal things and like barely being able to change a tire. Like that ain't shit. That should be learned immediately. But like we're missing the real world things and we're still getting this like indoctrinated industrial revolution. Hey, you have to learn all these things. And I'm not saying math and English aren't important, but like, do you need to know trigonometry going out of high school?
I've never been able to like, there are equations that I had to learn, but I've never applied them in the real world.
And it's like, we should be, for me, education should be about getting kids to get to their fullest potential.
Yeah. Creating opportunity
and finding out more about what a kid is good at learning. That's the same skill before the pill, because it's like our school system now is like, oh, just figure it out in there. But like,
one of my favorite sayings is like, when a kid goes away to college, right, they're expected to make some of the biggest financial commitments of their life, taking out loans, credit cards, and everything like that at 18. But yet a month before that, they were having to raise their hand to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
That is a gigantic jump.
It's a gigantic jump. And I think with our society, there was like, I definitely felt a pull to like go to school because that's what everybody else was doing. And like, that's what you were supposed to do. So it's like, that's what you do. But if you're deciding and making that, luckily enough for me, I was willing to change my major. And I tried kinesiology. It was great. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Went to psychology, went to philosophy, went to business. But like, had I not had that wherewithal to be like, okay, maybe this isn't what I want, I might have gone to school for 4 years, graduated kinesiology degree and done nothing with it.
Yeah, and then been stuck.
And then I would have been stuck. And now you have bills to pay, and now you have to pay the loan back. So it's like, it's just this cycle of getting people stuck inside the system in a way to keep people,
It is to keep people down.
It's to keep people in the system.
I had a thought about this the other day. I was thinking about just in general, the fact of student loans. And I was like, how can a government agency expect for someone to take out a loan with no plan to return it? That makes no sense to me. And then I saw a headline on the TV that talked about how the government just agreed to raise our debt ceiling. And I was like, because what they're doing is they're just doing what they think is best. They're taking out loans against people with absolutely no plan to actually pay this stuff back.
Yeah, for sure. That's why we're $3 trillion in debt or whatever.
That's exactly why we're there.
So there was a thing that I learned recently, and I think it was an Ivy League school. I think it was Cornell they were talking about, but the guy who was talking about it was basically like, most colleges have this.
Yeah.
They have some type of index fund.
Yes.
That has...
This was Princeton. Yes, this is the endowment. They were talking about how the endowment has grown so large that the interest in itself could help all of these kids who go to school.
It could pay all of the professors.
Yep.
It could let the kids go for free. They could eat for free and house for free.
Yep.
And the interest, that's being paid just from the interest, not even from the actual fund.
Yep.
So it's like they literally have enough money to let everybody go to school for free and not lose any money.
Yeah, and make money.
Yeah. But instead, it's like, oh no, we're not going to do that. You guys still have to pay. And it's like this thought process of like, we need more. It's like we're really missing that. Like, all we want to be able to do is work, provide for our family, and live a good life. And I feel like if we could just get people to give that, if we could get our politicians to give that back to America, we would be in a great place. And like, most people would be a lot more happy, because that, Pavlov's hierarchy of needs or whatever, Pavlov, if people can't get out of like that initial stage, they can't even think about the other things. They can't get to the next parts. They can't open up and be more expressive and work on their talents and work on the things that they actually want to work on, because the only thing they care about is food. And there's actually a really cool YouTube channel called Jubilee. Have you ever heard of it?
Never heard of it.
I just recently started watching it, and I've watched like 20 of them now. But it takes like, the last one that I saw was... it was African Americans and people from Africa.
Yeah.
And then there was like trans or liberal parents and conservative teachers. And it just has these people like not argue, but like start going back at it. And then it was like police officer versus gangbanger. And then it was white versus black. And then it was gay versus straight. And then it was beta male and alpha male. And they have hundreds of these interviews. And you start to listen to these people, and you start to hear about sometimes the problems. And one of the last ones I listened to was the rich and the poor. And it was so interesting that so much of it is a lot about mind state and about like mind frame, because 2 of the rich people started off like had terrible lives growing up. And then the 4 poor people, and you listen to it and it's just so interesting to hear other people's perspectives and like what they're going through. But it does feel like one of the guys was like, honestly, if I just had like $500 extra a month, if I could just get a little bit, I wouldn't have to worry about these things. But my job, I'm not making enough. And he's like, I'm an artist, I'm a content creator, but I work a retail job.
Yeah.
And now the mind frame state was like one of his things that I saw was a drawback, because he was like, if you're paying me $15 an hour, I'm going to work for $15. I'm going to give you $15 an hour. And the rich guy was like, no, you're seeing it backwards, because if you work for more than you're getting paid, you're going to end up getting paid more, because they're going to want to they're going to want to promote you and give you more money.
Yeah. And if you work for what you're paid for, you're only going to get paid for what you work for.
And it's like, and I think for me, I got to learn that in a long frame with working with the business, because I was like working and I was always trying to give it my all. And I feel like now finally, like I have not only the resources, but the ability to also do more in the business.
Yeah.
And I did have to work for, not that I wasn't getting paid while working for my own family business, but like I was always doing more than I knew, because I felt like in the long run, it's going to pay off. And like, it is my family. There's obviously a huge like, responsibility in that, because you always want to make sure that you're giving your portion of the pie and you're not like the leech or the one that's not doing enough.
Yeah.
And that definitely has created a good dynamic now. But I think growing up, as my father being my boss, there was definitely times where like it was hard to differentiate like who was my father and who was my boss. And like, you wouldn't always want to tell your boss everything. And like, where do you distinctively be like, am I telling my boss right now or my dad? Now that I'm older, I'm glad that I went through those things, because in some ways I had to not internalize, but like deal with them myself, because I didn't necessarily want to tell him. So I'd have to be like, okay, well, how am I going to deal with this? Because I don't necessarily have that thing.
So let's take an opportunity to kind of pivot the conversation towards like the family biz, right? So your dad, inventor of a technology,
correct,
an entrepreneur, right? One of the easiest ways, but also the most scary and difficult ways to get out of the system is to be able to start your own thing.
Yeah.
So your dad is an entrepreneur. What is his background, and how did he kind of get started in this space?
So he was a military brat growing up. My grandfather's in the Air Force, and he moved around a bunch, and then he ended up in San Diego, and he was a business broker. He had done a couple other things, but he had ended up being a business broker. Okay. And he sold a couple businesses, and then this one guy, they were in San Diego, and this one guy came to him and was like, I want to buy a window tinting company. Mm-hmm. My dad did a bunch of research, called a bunch of people, got the full scoop for him. The guy ends up buying a window tinting business, and my dad was like, this is a genius idea. Like, there's not a lot of people doing this, and like, I want to do this. So him and my mom had just had my sister, and they were like, well, where's it hot? Who's going to need window tint? And they moved to Las Vegas, and they opened up, he actually ended up buying the name from somebody, but Las Vegas Window Tinting. It was started in like 88, and he bought it in 90 or 91. He buys the name, and this was like the testament to my father, but 6-month-old daughter, mom's at home. He would wake up at 4 a.m. and had flyers, and he would go put flyers out on people's doors. He would run and just put flyers on people's door, go home. Mom's making breakfast, little baby's there, and little baby Katie, and just basically prayed that the phone rang. Yeah. And it started ringing, and he started going out and doing the job himself. And then he went into a house, met a lady. This lady became his sales manager. Met another guy, he became his installer. And still to this day, Steven, I mean, we still know him, and, like family. He knew me before I was born, basically. So starts a window tinting company, Las Vegas Window Tinting. Like, it definitely had a lot of advantage because of the name. People look up window tinting in Las Vegas Window Tinting, and he did a lot of like work as well to make that happen in relationships. And we were doing a project at the Green Valley Ranch, and the engineer was like, hey, I've got 80 of these beautiful red marble tables that look like shit. And every week, 20 of these have to come out, and my engineers are constantly sanding them down to get the etching out.
Oh, wow.
And so he was like,
opportunity,
please help us.
Yeah.
And my dad at first was like, I don't know shit about stone. Like, I'm sorry, but I'll go home and look, but I don't know. And he went online, looked up, how to protect marble from etching. And there was basically no guarantee with any liquid sealer. Still to this day, there is no liquid sealer that will stop the acid reacting with the calcium-based stone and creating an etch or a stain. So for the first year, he was the guinea pig, and we just put shit down. Like, we're in the film business, like a clear graffiti film, a security film, a this, a that, a this, a that. How thick, how not thick, how scratch resistant, all that jazz. And that led into, so the company that we bought film from for most of our time with Las Vegas window tinting is named Matico. That's the name of the company. Okay. And they're the people who still make our product today. So at that time, we went to Matico and we were like, hey, look, there's definitely some things we need to change about a film because it's on a window and it's then going to stone. So there was a lot of improvements that needed to be made. And most things on windows weren't made to be scratch resistant. They are made to get scratched and then get taken off, like a graffiti film or a security film. Somebody can break it, but it didn't have scratch resistance, was never a thing.
Right.
So that was one of the first things we started working on. Now we're on the 6th version of our film. We have about 41 dealers. Every city in the United States is covered: Mexico, Canada, Turkey, Dubai, Australia, Italy, London, couple other ones.
A global footprint that all started with Dad running out at 4 a.m. handing out like postcards,
you know? And like growing the thing. And like, there was definitely some times, like I remember we almost lost our house at one point.
As it goes.
We had to foreclose on our home. We ended up short selling our house. But at that time, we also got like the job of our business's lifetime, and we did the Vidara Hotel at the time when they built it. It was like an incredible design, but the sun basically came down, hit the curvature of the window, and created what they called a death beam, or a death, something like that.
Ugh.
Yeah. And so it would literally, like, the sun would hit, and it was so hot that it would come across, and it would like burn chairs up. It lit a car on fire. Like, it blew a car up.
Oh,
because somebody parked in the wrong spot and it hit it, and it stayed on the car long enough that it literally started the car on fire and blew the car up.
Oh, wow.
There was a person who, like, it burned. They were reading the newspaper, and it burned the newspaper and started to burn them. Like, they were like this reading it, and it came across. They were like, ooh, hot.
Sounds like an episode of like Mythbusters.
Crazy,
you know what I mean?
right? And so Matico actually created a film that would work good with this, and we did the outside job. It was a huge job for us. I was actually 16 at the time, so I couldn't even do it because it was on the outside of the Vidara. Like, I had to like get on the whatever those things are called.
Like the window cleaner things.
Swing stage, I think.
Yeah.
It would go over and hang down from the Vidara. And like, it was very specific rules. Like, if the wind was over 5 miles an hour at gusts, they couldn't do it because like the swing stage would swing back and forth, and it was sketchy. I'm kind of glad that I didn't do it. I think I would have done it.
Parents.
But like, holy shit, it was scary. You had to like, every single thing had to be tied up. Like, nothing could fall off. Every single tool had to be tied up and connected to some carabiner that was connected to the swing stage. But they did the job. It was huge for us. It saved our business. It saved our life to some degree. And we still ended up having to short sell the house. But I remember that, like, going through those things. So I remember watching my father work his ass off. He still does to this day.
So here's the thing that I like to be able to talk about.
Yeah,
when you're an entrepreneur and you come from an entrepreneurial mindset as a family, right? Risk doesn't seem to be as scary because you've been exposed to it throughout your entire life, right? A huge thing in psychology to help people get over feelings of anxiety and stuff like that is exposure therapy.
Yeah.
You've been exposed to risk your entire life, right? And so is that why you feel so confident in like being able to do all the other kind of stuff that you do?
Now that you say that, I would definitely say that there's like a family saying of ours is that we don't gamble, we gamble in our life.
Every single fucking day. Exactly.
Every day.
Yeah.
We gamble in our life every single day. So it's hard to go gamble at a casino when like we're gambling all the fucking time.
Yeah.
So like, we started like, we actually, right now we've expanded the most we ever have. But I remember we started like this company. It was called Decon 7. And we actually didn't start the company, but there's a lab in, it was like New Mexico, Sandia Labs, and they created this like hydrogen peroxide mix that would kill anthrax. And it's like still used in military uses now, but we kind of got a hold of it. This was like 15, 20 years ago. And the guy was like, oh my, like it still is an incredible product. We tried to get back in and failed again, but like what the bottom line, people didn't care if it was that clean.
Yeah.
Because there's 99.99. This killed like 3 more nines, which is billions of organisms. But like, people don't give a shit.
Yeah. The margin of improvement wasn't like that.
It's not crazy enough to get people to move from their other companies.
From Clorox. Yeah.
So we tried. We lost a bunch of money in that. Had to take a loan from my grandpa. Like definitely I remember like things being good, things being bad. And now that you say that, for sure, I think that my life, I definitely saw a lot of risks. And I guess now it's like when I did see the world as being the thing that I kind of wanted to take on to some degree, that risk was like, oh, well,
I do this every day.
And it's risk to reward. Like, I'm willing to do it. And like, we're already taking risks. So like, why not jump for the biggest risk? If we've already, and for me, luckily, like I have gotten to work in the business. I have gotten to learn a lot of things. We've gotten to see the trials and tribulations. And now the product is the best that it's ever been. So like, it has been nice to like grow with the company and like, now, like as I was saying earlier, that like this is definitely the best I've ever felt. And a lot of times I did just like keep my head down and keep moving. There was times, I'm sure I went through times of depression that I didn't even recognize were depression, was just like, just shut up and keep going. Like it's going to get better. It's going to be okay. Because growing up, that was my life. Like there wasn't a good point for a while until I came back and started playing lacrosse, when I got these like, oh, I'm on the same playing field. That was like my first like, moment. And that was at 21 basically, or 20 years old. So like it took me a long time for me to feel like happy. And like I definitely had happy moments. My family life was, you know, like I had both my parents who loved me, who adored me, but like out in the world, I felt like I was disregarded and like it didn't matter. And I'm just this chubby kid. And it was like, oh, I just hate that. I did. And I worked really hard to not have that be the case. And like still to this day, like I don't really go to the store without putting clothes on that match good and look good. Like I don't leave my house. Even my girlfriend, there's times that I'll wash my hair because my hair, I had a hat on and I took my hat off and my hair looks bad and we're in the home. I'm not leaving. But like I still have this thing that like I'm always going to try to be presentable and I'm always going to try to put my best foot forward, because that gave me an advantage growing up to like make me feel good. And I've just kept it. And it's just like, I think it to the end, to some degree, I have like not a lot of quit involved in myself.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing for me is like, you know, I have conversations about money and kind of how things go. And it's like money, my dad established a mindset of mine. I was like, money comes and money goes. But the confidence that you have in yourself to make more money is really that superpower kind of lays within me. So it's like, what if things happen? It's like,
it doesn't matter. You're going to figure it out.
Exactly. Things will happen. Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
And so I will keep pushing.
100%. I think that that's definitely been something that, and to some degrees I learned in the gym.
100%. Showing up every day.
Going to the gym.
That delayed gratification that you were talking about.
And like knowing that it'll be better. And like I looked up, like I remember when I was 21 being like, when I'm 25, it's going to be sweet. When I'm 30, it's going to be sweet. And now I'm like, I'm here. I'm in the place. Like I can give myself some, you know, like even when I put out my first song, it wasn't until, that was in November. It wasn't until February that I took a break and was like, hey, good job. And gave myself a little pat on the back.
And that's so important, man. Do you know what I mean? Because when you have that high achieving mindset, we often find ourselves in the gap between where we are and where we're trying to get to. And often people don't pause enough to sit down and look at the gain of how far we've really come. And that sense of perspective and gratitude about all the challenges that you've overcome in your life,
and
the weight loss, the business, the overcoming, the losing contracts, the customers, the wins. It's huge. Do you know what I mean? And like, I try and put myself in that mindset all the time. Yeah,
for sure. And I think it's, in some ways it's building slow at a time, like one at a time. And I think I think somebody was just one of the Grant Cardones or something like that was like, win a day. If you can win a day, you can win a week.
Dude, I think you just saw I put a piece of content out there.
Was that you?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. Oh, no, okay. I love that.
Like if you win enough days, you win the week. If you win enough weeks, you can win the month. If you win enough months, you can win the year. If you win enough years, you can win life. If you break it down to that small little tactical stuff of like, I'm just going to win today. That's it. You know what I mean? And I've been dealing with a couple demons of like me trying to get back in shape, me getting my diet back on point, me trying to be more focused and less distracted like we've talked about. And sometimes it's a minute by minute battle to be like, I just need to win this next 10 minutes.
I just need to not eat those cookies.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
That ice cream sandwich.
And then I keep thinking about myself and like my mindset of like, okay, Keenan, how long can you stick with this? Because when I turned 30 years old, I had a real conversation with myself. I was like, how many times are you going to continue to have the conversation with yourself of, man, I wish I wouldn't have stopped doing that one thing I was doing, going to the gym, working on this project. I'm tired of being disappointed with myself. So I'm going to fight right now for my future version of myself who can be like, dude, we did it.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
That is such an internal battle. I think that, excuse me. I would imagine that's with everybody. And in our particular case, that is I think it's a constant battle. And even with, it's so interesting, the relationship that we have with food. And I think that's one of those things that like you learn with being overweight that like some people never deal with. Like my fiance, Jen. Has never really been overweight, has never really understood. And like, there was a moment we had in our relationship when she was like, why do you like think about food so much? Or like, why do you like, and I still am. I am we're always our harshest critic. Yeah. And I have been so deeply upset and saddened and disappointed with myself for so many, in so many instances that like, it still draws a thing that like, sometimes I eat too much and I'm like, God damn it. And it's like, all comes back flooding in. And when I really had this conversation with her, it was an understanding, and now she understood it more, but there's still this like, but it's not the same. Yeah. Until you feel this way about food, and like it impacts so many people because we have such a huge obesity rate. And I think that's something that I'm kind of pulling back into my message, because to some degree I took it out a little bit, and I haven't really talked about it that much in my music because in some ways I didn't want to talk about it because I was like, I'm just, what am I going to say? Just some chubby little kid, da, 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 da. Yeah. But with how many people are overweight, I think that it does need to be a message. And I think that at all times we should be trying to encourage people that are in that position to try to work on it, because I can only imagine that the way I looked at myself in the mirror has to be similarly to when somebody else does.
We all have that shared life experience, man.
And like right. You feel good when you look good. Yeah. Even when you dress good. But like, I know I used to think that it was my clothes that made me look fat. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, no, it's not. Yeah. It's not the clothes. It's how you feel and how you fit them. And it's a struggle. And I think the bigger conversation than just losing weight is our food. Yeah. I agree. How we eat. I agree. I don't know if we need to go into this, but we can, if you want to.
I mean, it's a huge component. What I really want to talk about really quick to keep it on the family business side is, so, when you're building a business with your family, there's trials and tribulations. And something you talked about was the EOS entrepreneurial system, which I think is really interesting.
Very cool.
So your dad is the founder of the business. Yes. You already gave the nod to your mom as the fucking owner, the god.
Yeah, she's the owner.
You know what I mean? So is my mom. Exactly. Yeah. But the question is like, how do you find your role in the business? Yeah. Are you filling gaps? Have you gone through any type of experience where you're like, I don't feel like I have the power to influence this role in the business, I need to switch it up? Yeah. How is that growth process going for you?
It definitely, about a year and a half ago, we hired a girl named Kayla. She was fantastic. She was with us for about a year and a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was transitioning from doing more sales, from doing more restoration, and I had gathered two guys, or one guy at the time. Now we've got two guys that are in our installation team in Las Vegas. Yeah. We feel really lucky to have gotten both of them. They're incredible, Daniel and Albert. We are just feel fortunate to have them.
Shout out to the boys.
They're incredible. Mm-hmm. And we tell them all the time we love them, and fantastic guys. And so at that time, I was kind of transitioning into sales, and my dad had gotten an assistant at the time, which was Kayla. Mm-hmm. Quickly, it kind of became, there wasn't enough for her to do with just assisting him. So he gave her some sales. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, I did feel a little bit like, oh, that was kind of what I thought I was going into. Mm-hmm. And I had a little bit of struggle there, because then it was like, well, what am I going to do? Yeah. So we get Kayla. Yep. She's a great addition to the team. Yep. It wasn't enough for her to just assist my dad, so she goes into sales. She kind of takes over the residential sales in Las Vegas, and like half the strip, me and her split it. In my head, I didn't really feel like there was enough for two people to do it, so I needed to find out other things that I was doing. Mm-hmm. So my main thing became relationships with hotels. Now that I'm here, just to caveat, I do think I'm a relationships guy. Yeah. I am not a salesman. I'll do sales. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with sales.
Out of necessity for the business.
I'm happy with doing installations. I'll do whatever's needed. I wear a lot of hats. Yeah. But I'm a relationships guy at my core. I love getting to meet people, getting to talk to people, creating a relationship with them, and giving value to whatever it is they have. Yeah. Especially with Tough Skin, if you've got the marble, you've got the issue, we've got a solution. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to hard sell. And that's one of the benefits of the product. So she goes into that, and I start to have to kind of diversify what I'm doing, because in some ways I felt like I'm not really doing a lot. Mm-hmm. But if you sell one hotel, it's worth it. Yeah. And I need more. Like I did feel for a little bit that like I was just turning my wheels, because if you have 8 hours in a day to work, or more, whatever, or less, whatever. Yep. And I'm just calling hotels, like half the time they don't want to talk to you. Yeah. Most of the time you're calling, you're like talking to somebody at the front desk. Okay, can you leave a voicemail for the engineer?
They don't really give a shit.
And they don't really give a shit. Yeah. So like there's times that like it just took a long time, and like it was just there's something in my nose. There was times that I just felt like I was turning my wheels. Mm-hmm. And then me and Jen actually just took our RV out for the first time back in January, I think.
Okay.
And while we were on the trip, Kayla called and was like, hey, I got a new job. I got basically a job selling windows, and I'm going to take it. And we, at the time, like immediately I was like, I'm so happy for you.
Right.
And it was a perfect timing for me because I had gone through the motions of, I learned how to talk to hotels. I learned what works, kind of what doesn't. And I learned that being in person is probably the best way. So sometimes I'll just go to a hotel, fly to a hotel, stay at the hotel, talk to the engineer. Because when you're at the hotel, they're kind of obligated to talk to you.
Yeah.
Now I'm a customer. You have to talk to me.
Yeah.
Now I can tell you about it.
P.S. I'm in room 242.
Come check it out.
Yeah.
And so I got to learn that and do that. And then when she moved on, it was kind of just like the perfect fit that now I'm back involved with everything in Las Vegas.
Gave you an opportunity to take on more responsibility as well.
And bigger things. Because I wasn't necessarily thinking that way at the time. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do this part-time with the sales of the hotels. Then it was like, now you're doing this most of the time, because Las Vegas, for me in Las Vegas, I'm probably spending 20 hours a week of intentional work, 20 hours, maybe 25. That's talking to customers, talking to the strip. But like on the strip, at all our properties, the guys have a route that they go and check in with all the places.
Yeah.
So they report back to me, okay, this needs to be done. I can send a quote out for this, talk to this person, talk to that person. But like, I don't have to go do those things anymore.
Yeah.
So now I'm able to delegate some, and I'm able to make sure that like everything's getting handled, but I know that I was there. That was one of the issues that I had, is that sometimes if Kayla sold a house, the guys would call me and be like, hey, I need you to help me with this. And I'm like, dude, you need to give me so much information. And it was kind of hard sometimes to get caught up.
Yeah.
Because if I'm off somewhere doing something else and I have no idea, I might be in a meeting, I might be doing something, and it might not get done as quickly as it needs to.
Yeah,
So
I feel you.
It did work out kind of perfectly, and I think she loves her job. I'm like, obviously we're happy that she was able to get a promotion to her for her own self, and it worked out because now I kind of do feel like I'm in charge.
Yeah.
With that being said, I also started to go to more, well, I've always gone to conventions like the HD show and a couple other ones, but this year specifically, I went into basically all of them.
Yeah.
And so the last one that we did, that was one of the big ones, was called Hotel Point. And you basically pay to get to talk to executives. And you get 2 boardroom meetings where there's 15 executives from all around the United States, from different Hilton, Hyatt, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons.
Yeah, put me in the room.
The highest people.
Yeah.
They get sent to Hotel Point and it's a copacetic relationship that Hotel Point puts it on. The hotels get to bring in their people and get to show them what the newest upcoming technology is.
Yeah.
There was like a company that had paint that you could like put a torch lighter to and it not light, and like stick your hand in water on the other side and it was still cold.
Wow.
Incredible stuff. So the hotels want to send their people there because it's the cutting edge technology, and you pay to get your seat at the table to talk to them.
Yeah.
And you also have lunch, you have dinner together, you have breakfast together, you get to talk to them. And like, that was the most like, oh, this is me. Because all I was doing was talking. And like, I ended up talking to one executive from, he sent us a job that we're going to, one of our installers is going to San Francisco next week to go do a job and go talk to this guy for me. But we were on the escalator and I just started shooting the shit with him. And we start talking and he's like, oh man, what do you guys do? And I gave him my card. He sends me, and now we're going to go, do a bid on a job in San Francisco. So that was like just fluidity for me. And like, and now I think I recognize it the most.
Yeah. One thing that you said a couple times that caught my attention was you don't have to hard sell.
Yeah.
Right? Because the product in itself is that good,
Yeah.
right? And you're meeting a need that obviously the marketplace needs. But my question is in the sales process, have you ever felt yourself needing to be more salesy, or does your ability to speak with confidence come from conviction because you guys know that your shit works?
I think most of the time the latter, and I just go in and say the thing is that when I break it down, so if you have marble, there's 3 options. One is you can have a traditional restoration cycle. This is going to cost you, a good guy is going to charge you $20. You might be able to get it for $15 a square foot. Let's just say average $15 a square foot.
Gotcha.
Our product is going to cost $30 to $35 a square foot. When that restoration guy leaves and you paid him $1,500 or $2,000, so does his warranty. And that same day, if you spill something, you create that same problem again. And he's going to come back. Some people, on average, it's going to be about every year. If he comes every year, by the second year, you've already paid for our product and you've gotten no protection. Mm-hmm. So if you choose not to go with us, that's fine. But I'm going to give you, I'll send you to a restoration company that we work with. But those are your options. No liquid sealer is going to guarantee. Most of the time, that's a sale that in and of itself. The other option is More. There's a company called More Anti-Etch. It's like a liquid pour over, you UV cure it. It's about 3 to 4 times our product. Mm-hmm. So if they go to them, they're going to find that it's $100 a square foot. So you could have our product installed 3 times, which on average, a 5-year lifespan, that's 15 years.
Yeah.
And you've only paid for their initial install that eventually is going to need more upkeep. Mm-hmm. So it really does just make sense. And for me, I've never really been like, you have to sign.
Yeah.
Like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that is from a place that, again, I'm fortunate enough to like not feel like I don't really have a quota. Like we talk about, hey, this is what we want to do, but like there's no micromanagement that like you didn't sell this job. What was the problem?
Yeah.
Because like some people don't want to buy it, and it is expensive. It's not cheap. $35 a square foot. A home that's only 100 square feet. It's like our average home size. $3,500.
Yeah.
It's not an inexpensive product. So some people just don't have the budget, which is fine. It is what, we try to work with people when we can. There's certain situations we have designer discounts, contractor pricing. So there is other ways, but typically it's the people who buy marble most of the time, 90% of the time, are not buying marble because it's not expensive or expensive.
Yeah.
They're buying it because they want it.
Yeah.
And the person that wants it is going to need tough skin. Mm-hmm. And so that is our market. In a sense, it's the 1% that is buying the marble, that it wants it to look good, that it has the natural beauty. Because if you have quartz in your kitchen, it does look good. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. But if you put it next to a piece of marble, you're like, oh, this is what it's emulating.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't even realize I had quartz in my kitchen, but I'm glad you picked up on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the business. I gotta know. But yeah, and it shouldn't have problems. It's resin based. The problem with quartz sometimes, in certain situations, quartz can become really expensive. But if it does have an issue, it's really hard to fix.
Yeah.
That's one of the benefits of natural stone, is that if you buy a piece of marble, no matter what, it can almost always get fixed. Mm-hmm. With our product, now it becomes practical, and so our goal is to. Our bread and butter is a designer that's designing for a hotel or, some person, and they say, hey, we're going to put marble in and we're going to spec tough skin so that you can have marble and it can be practical. So that way the end user is like already on board. Mm-hmm. So that's our primary customer, is getting to the person before they buy the marble, because people go and ask for marble, and then oftentimes the conversation goes, well, you probably don't want marble because it has these issues.
Right. You want to be integrated into the sales process at every single level.
Yeah. Because what happens is that when people call you after the fact, you now have to sometimes be like, oh, well, this is what you bought.
Yeah.
Rather than it's like, oh, yeah, you knew about this going into it. But like every once in a while we get somebody who's like, oh, they said it wasn't going to etch that bad, but in the first day I had a party and I spilled and it's red.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah, well, your stone is calcium based. Some people think, oh, well, this was really expensive. Did I get a shitty product? And it's like, no, you bought a piece of stone that's just calcium based. And calcium reacts with anything acidic. So basically everything that we use in a kitchen, in a bar, and in a restroom, whatever it is going to react with that. Yeah. And people do, like, we had a lady, like, this is probably 3 or 4 years ago. Every morning she woke up and put saran wrap over all of her counters in her kitchen. It was only like 80 square feet, so not huge. Yeah. But she every single morning put saran wrap so that her kids and the babysitter wouldn't mess it up. Every single morning she took it off and put it. We put tough skin in, and it was funny because it was in Seattle, so we had to fly up there. We sent a box, and we needed a little bit wider of a box because of the way she measured. But we put a seam in there. She was like, I don't care. Mm-hmm. You have no idea how much stress and time and money this saved me, because every single day she woke up, and she was like, it was an extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, bless her heart.
And now she's like, oh, I don't have to do anything?
Yeah.
So that is the benefit. And when people talk about, I have an answer for almost every quarrel.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I asked you that question a couple of seconds ago is because like I hear the passion in which you speak about your product, and the conviction in itself is the sales process.
For sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have to sell me on it, because you're telling me about all these experiences and the commonality of how we all kind of experience our own home lives and how you guys benefit. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And where that comes from, I don't know.
I mean, you've been grinding, dog.
But like I feel so... I think, okay, to go back to the ADHD thing just for a moment, I did get diagnosed when I was a little bit younger, but I don't know necessarily I don't think I have an attention deficit problem. I have, if it's not interesting to me, problem.
Yeah.
And
that is completely understandable and a shared experience I think a lot of people have.
And so with music, and when I get to talk about the world, and when I get to talk about my family business, like I'm so integrated and involved that like I love it.
Yeah, we're speaking about your worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it's how I look at things. And it's like,
I mean, this is a conversation I want to kind of pivot really quick. So they talk about burnout, right? And they talk about burnout comes from doing work that we feel like we are not impactful in.
Yes.
So it's like we show up every single day, we put our time into this, but it's like, dude, I'm not really making any progress.
And nothing really
happens. But it's like, why is Jake never burned out about making music? If you're staying up till 3:00 in the morning, why does that happen? It's because you're passionate about it.
Yeah, and I think that everybody gets burnt out. I've gotten burnt out for sure. There's definitely been... there's been many times when I was like, this isn't what I'm going to do. And I think when I was younger, and I don't know if my parents knew they were doing it or whatever the case was, maybe they talked about it, but like there would be times that I would get upset and they would just leave me and be like, go feel your feelings, whatever.
Yeah.
And the next day, they'd be making breakfast. Hey, Jake, how you doing? Good morning. They would never take that into the next day. And I think growing up, I had this like, okay, well, the day's end, I wake up, it starts over.
Oh, that's a good perspective.
So when I went through music and there would be times I'm like, fuck this, I don't want to do it. I would just wait a little bit. And then I'd go back down and sit at my computer and I'd listen to something and be like, oh, this is kind of good. Yeah. Oh, there's a little something here. Yeah. And then I'd want to keep doing it again. And whenever I also felt like this isn't what I wanted, all I would need is one conversation. I would need somebody to start talking about something and me be like, oh, I get fired up about it.
Yeah.
Because I want to have the conversation. But for me, I think music is my vehicle to get me to the conversation.
Yeah.
And without music, I used to think I needed music to give myself a seat at the table. I don't necessarily have that same perspective now, but I do see music as a credibility thing to be like, look, I've said these things so that this is what I mean.
Yeah, and I heard you perk up about that a little bit earlier when your dad gave you that validation in the car.
God.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff really matters.
Yeah, for sure. It touched my heart. Because I there's a little bit of like, I hope you do still... and I think growing up it was like there was so much, it was all business a lot of times. It was like business, and still we go on family we call them bizcations. We'll go somewhere and we'll have family meetings, but like even when we're not in the family meeting, half the time we're talking about business. Like we are a business family. And like at the dinner table, 70% of our conversations revolve around a job or a business proposition or this or that. And so it is all we do to some degree. Like, and that is partly my father and him, because he definitely has been like a rock to that.
Have you ever felt like there was a time when the business first ratio of your family dynamic kind of created friction?
For sure.
Do you ever think that there was times when like, dog, we just need to shut this down? Or have you or your sister ever been like, yo, I don't want to be a part of this anymore?
Definitely. And I think growing up, one of the reasons I think I needed to find myself a little bit so I graduated high school a year early, and I moved to San Diego with my friends. I think in that process, there was nothing, I didn't want anything to do with the family business, and not that I didn't want to do it. It was just that I was like, I need to do something else.
I need my space.
I need my space. I need to figure this out. And that's when I lost the weight. That's when I became a personal trainer. I was going to school. So like I was getting to figure out a different life. And then when I moved back, the business was there, and I was doing it because it was like, yeah, this is a job. I can do it. And I was at the time when I moved back, I was a personal trainer. And I worked a deal with Jay Jung at the City Athletic Club that I basically paid a lesser amount than everybody else, but I had very specific hours. So I was only allowed, I only had 7 to 12 clients at a time, and I would only work for 3 to 4 hours most at a day. Okay. So I was like, hey, look, I'm coming to you because I really love being a trainer. I would love to keep my clients, but if I pay you this much, I'm not going to make any money because I can't work these hours. So he made a deal with me. It was a great thing. I got to train my people. I also worked in the family business. I also was going to school and playing lacrosse. That was the first burnout feeling that I ever had, just because I was doing way too much. And then starting the music thing and doing the Tough Skin, and at the time it was Las Vegas window tinting and Tough Skin. That was really the merger of the two, that it was okay, I did these things and now I'm happy doing this thing, knowing that if I work towards being a good, making music and being good at being a rapper, then this thing will be able to help me along that way. And it has been such a copacetic thing that I've learned so many life lessons, not in music and through Tough Skin, but have led to things in music, and things in music that have led to better things in Tough Skin. So
That dynamic is very interesting to me because I feel like in today's world of social media, and we've talked about this a couple times today, people want to do business with people that they like. Right. We don't want to do business with brands, but connecting on a deeper level like music, I think is so advantageous for you to keep sharing that story.
Yeah.
Because there's so many human experiences that people can relate with you on.
Thanks.
Have you had that experience as well?
I'm not necessarily in business because most of the people, like, I'm working with engineers and, like, most of the time it's older people and, like, none of them are really, like, I'm not telling them about my music, but I have found that it has happened outside of business where I've gone somewhere and somebody's been like, oh my gosh, like, I listen to your music, and then we talk about business, and then it ends up being something like, I went to a bar one time and I was waiting for a friend, ended up talking to a guy. We started shooting the shit. I ended up doing a job with him because it was just like, we started talking and then he was like, oh my God, what do you do? And then talking about family business. He's like, holy shit, I have marble. And it was just like this, like, random funny thing. But I feel like most of the time in my business relationships, only maybe the people that follow me on social media, which is like the dealers and the people that I train, but like the engineers and the designers and whatnot, like most of them don't necessarily know about it.
Yeah, no, I feel
and you. I think I've created a lot of, growing up, I created, and still to this day, like, most of the time, the music part of my conversation is later down the line.
Yeah.
Like, I don't lead with, oh, I'm a rapper or I make music. I typically lead with, oh, I'm in a family business and da-da-da. And if we go further into conversation, we go further into conversation. Because in some degree, I feel like I keep my music so close to my heart that, like, it means so much to me. And I also think that I'm saying, a lot.
Yeah.
That
I mean, I love the fact that you're, like, speaking your truth, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, that people can connect with you on the message that you speak. I think that's incredibly amazing.
And I think, and I guess to that point, most of the people that I work with, if there is an opportunity, like, I will say, like, we'll talk about something, like, maybe it's not music related, but it's the conversation that music is driving towards.
Yeah.
And that person then connects and is like, oh, okay. Like, I've definitely made that connection, not necessarily including the music, but, like, talking about something or, like, oh, wow, it's tough that we just passed this law or, like, this thing just happened. Like, it feels like we need to be more connected rather than, divided and blah, 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 blah. So I think I probably bring that into conversations a little bit more, but yeah. And there was definitely times. I mean, I think with anything, there's good times and bad times. But the last 3 years, I've had the most gratitude and, like, forgiveness to myself, I think, as well. And, like, acceptance of who I think I am and what I want to do and, like, what I'm really doing. That it's definitely, and I think humbleness. Like, I think I came from a place, probably similar that, like, I was never really, like, exuding confidence. So I feel like now I do, but I don't necessarily need to, like, boast about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I find myself in a lot of situations just, like, being a chameleon and just, like, I'm in the situation, but I'm going to let it evolve how it's going to evolve. And I don't necessarily always feel like I need to now interject.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I definitely felt like I was like, I need to, and I felt like I was right as well. I think that's something that happens when you're younger that, like, I know, stupid, but, like, the spirit lives on. This is definitely the way. If when you die, this, and it's like, bitch, you don't know shit.
Yeah.
Like, you can't know that. Like, and now it's like, there's so many religions. I just hope that if people are using religion to get to a better place, I'm all for it. I think people should follow anything that helps them get to some sort of peace in their life. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, well, maybe this is wrong or maybe that's right. And it's like, no, nothing is right or wrong for the most part. Even the bad guys don't have to be. Some of the bad guys are good and some of the good guys are bad. So it's like, there is no, like, oh, this is exactly how it is. And now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And I know that I want to make an impact in this thing. And in a sense, I'm still just moving towards it. Yeah. And whenever that day comes. But, like, I'm ready to stand at attention when the time comes. And until that point, I'm kind of just, like, moving.
Yeah, you're just continuing on. You know what I mean? It's really important to keep marching forward. The last thing that I really want to touch on here today is something that I really admire is you and your sister's relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
So you guys have been as tight as thieves the entire time I've known you guys. And it's been very interesting to look at it from the outside perspective, realizing that you guys are also operating a business together.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with your sister changed over time? And has it ever become taxing because of business? Because you guys from the outside are like best friends.
Yeah, for sure. And we still are. I think that growing up, we didn't really see each other a lot. Like obviously we were in the same home, but like she was 2.5 years older. So when I was in 3rd grade, she was in 6th grade. Yeah. So like we never really were in school together. We never really were in sports together. And then my freshman year of high school, she was a senior. And that was the first time we got to go to school together. Yeah. She drove me to school. She helped me pick my outfits, even though I would never wear them again today. But like she helped me pick my outfits for the first 5 days. It was like, hey, this is cool. That's cool. She drove me to school. I got to like walk in with her friends and feel like I'm a part of a thing. Yeah. That was like the first time I had ever felt that. Like, oh, people like me and I can be here and like be cool. And not that I didn't have friends, but like I always we moved around a couple times, went to a couple of different schools. I never had like when I started playing lacrosse, there was a couple friends that were older than me that I'm still friends with today, but they all grew up together in the same neighborhood. They knew each other for like 10 years. And I had so much admiration towards like having these people that they're your friends. Yeah. And I didn't have that like core group. And then my sister kind of became that group.
Pause 1 second.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah, could you let them through, please? Thank you. Sorry.
No, you're good. So that's when we really like became tight. And then she went off to college. I kept going through high school, and then we connected back when I moved back to Las Vegas, and we lived together for a little bit. Okay. That's when we really like became best friends, like living together. Yeah. And then when she moved to California, that was definitely like, oh, wow, she's over there. Yeah. But I think in a lot of ways it strengthened our relationship, because when we lived together, there was definitely times where we butted heads, because it was like when you live together with people. Now I totally understand why living with one person is fantastic, like my fiance. But like when you're living with friends, like you're gonna butt heads, you're gonna fight, and like I'm just glad that I am friends with the people that I still live or that I lived with. But like I could easily see, and I know people that live with people, and now they're not like they don't talk. Yeah. So I'm glad that I have that open relationship with those people and with my sister. But I think it strengthened our relationship. And when we were doing business together, it was never like we were never competing, and we were never like, oh, well, you did this, so I got to do this. Although there was things that like when she makes more, I'm like, I want to do more. Yeah. Or when I feel like she does that same thing. And like now one of the hard things is that she is in Los Angeles, she is the boss and by herself. And there is times that like, I feel like we lack the support we should be giving at times, but it's also tough because we're busy here and we're doing like she's doing Southern California, a massive market for us, but in a lot of senses like we're doing the rest of the world. And like I cover most of the dealers west of the Mississippi. Like if they have problems or questions, they call me, and like a lot of their just like they're conversing throughout the weeks. And then I have my install team in Las Vegas, and then I also have the hotels that I work on selling as well, and the relationships that I work on building. So there is times that like I feel thin, that like I can't help her, and that's sometimes it feels the worst for me because I'm like I know she needs help. Yeah. And there's times, but like I also feel like that's the person I can call if I'm like want to vent or like I want to just tell you about this thing and like talk about business, because she's probably had a very similar experience, and then not like talk shit about people, but we can just like have that moment of like let me just, and we can both give each other that moment every once in a while. And I think it's nice to have somebody that like I can talk to about with business, and they totally understand. Like they know exactly what I'm talking about, and vice versa at times. And so there's like, I'm going out there in a few weeks, and I'm going to go, me and Kyle are going to shoot videos and content for jobs that are hers, and I'm going to go help her guy, and then we're going to hang out on Saturday. And like those are moments, it just makes those moments so much more special because I don't get to see her as much. Yeah. For me, I mean, that's like my road dog, she saw me go through so many things. She was there at my physique show with the Go Jake sign. Like she's been through there, she's seen me grow up. And so there's some degree that like she has a perspective of myself that I don't have. Yeah. And she puts me in check sometimes too, which is great, that like I can tell her things. She's like, are you sure? Like, is that really? And at times I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Maybe. Thank you for like saying like no or saying something about it. So I think that we have a very honest relationship with each other. And we have a very open relationship that like we can talk about things and like feel good about things, and also at times vent and like be like, oh, fuck, this is just like, sometimes you just need somebody to talk to and like vent to. And like, I know that person is always in my corner, and it's always going to be Katie. And that definitely is a special thing. And like, I there's definitely times that in certain situations where like I have to separate like my life with Jen and my life with Katie, because to some degree, there's times that like it crosses, and most of the time it's great, but there's other situations where it's like, oh, I need this time with Jen. Like, I got to spend time with Jen.
Compartmentalize.
And then sometimes I have to spend time with Katie without Jen. Like there is certain situations, but those are like the ladies in my life that they're going to be there forever no matter what. So for me, it's like, I just have to sometimes figure that out, but they both know at any moment in time, I'm there for them regardless, doesn't matter. So that feels good. And but yeah, that's my dog.
Yeah.
And dude, she is fucking killing it. Like last year we got to send out an email. There's only one dealer. Well, there's 2 dealers that we have, Katie, and then there's another that's called Nets, but they cover 13 states in the Northeast.
Okay.
But last year, maybe a year and a half ago, we had a thing, and Katie sold the most, bought the most tough skin. Oh, so, wow. We got to send an email to all of our dealers, all these other dudes, all these other businessmen that are all doing great, and say, hey, just so you know, my daughter Katie,
she beat everybody.
She beat everybody.
Yeah.
But the thing is we focus only on tough skin. We don't do restoration. We sub it out because we create relationships. She actually recently did bring on a restoration company, so now she's going to be a full service thing. But she focuses most of her attention on tough skin, and a lot of our dealers have it as an addition to their product. So they do restoration. They have a slab yard. They sell stone. They do this. They do that, and they offer tough skin. We only offer tough skin. We don't really have other things. So it does help us focus more because we're in a sense a one-track pony. You come to us for this, and if we have other issues, I'm just going to give it to somebody that we know, and they're going to give us stuff that is for us. So it's a back and forth. But yeah, that was a good moment that we got to send that email out.
I mean, I think that's what it's really about. At the end of the day, we want to be able to build memories with the people who we love. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I just want to thank you so much, man.
Dude,
we're going to wrap it. Yeah, bro. Thank you so much for talking about the heart that you really come here with, but also all the elements of hustle that you have as well, bro.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Doug.
Yeah,
all right, man.
Sure.
Thanks, guys. That's been another episode of the Heart and Hustle podcast. Thanks for tuning in again. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jake.
For sure.
You're the man.
That was awesome.
All right, bro.